Hey everybody, this is Mike Oppenheim, and you are listening to Coffin Talk, Interviews with the Living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. This week, I am coming to you from an apartment in Los Angeles, abutting Beverly Hills, with a very near and dear friend, Mr. Jesse Cohen. I met him in college, my very first year, I believe even in my first month, and we've been friends ever since. And he, when I met him in college, he was pre-law, then he became a successful lawyer, and he had been living in Philadelphia, but he decided to move to Los Angeles, where he has actually started his own nonprofit organization. So I'm very excited to explore that transition, what he's currently doing, and then, of course, his metaphysical philosophies. So with no further delays, Jesse, how are you doing?
I'm very good, Mike. Thanks for giving me a chance to talk. I like talking, so any opportunity where I can tell people a little bit about some of the more exciting things that I'm doing in my life these days, I take advantage of those opportunities now.
Yeah, and there's going to be a link in the bio and everything to your charity, if I can call it that. But what exactly is the name of it? How would you define it, and what does it do?
Yeah, so we're a nonprofit youth arts foundation. The name that we use is Mount of Angels because it sounds cool and it sort of exemplifies our philosophy. Our slogan is Angels Live Forever, which really just means that if you do good things, people will remember you for those good things that you've done. The legal name of the foundation is the B.H. Foxy Foundation because it was started by a character that I created, which we'll probably talk a little bit more about, named B.H. Foxy, and he's actually the chief executive fox of the foundation, and I just work for him.
That's awesome. And I actually have his logo on my coffee maker at home, and I look at it every single day of my life because I'm a huge coffee fan. Yeah, and actually I skipped an important question that I always ask guests because we're live and I'm not used to it. But how old are you? Where did you grow up? And what generation, if any, do you consider yourself a member of?
I'm 44, although I tell people on dating profiles that I'm 35. And I grew up in Philadelphia during the 80s. So I think that's Gen X. I'm not even, I think so, but I'm definitely putting aside the label of the generation. I'm definitely a child of the 80s. I grew up with all of the 80s Star Wars and Trapper Keepers and, snap bracelets and the early days of rap music with Run DMC and the Beastie Boys, and pretty much everything of the 80s is ingrained into my persona.
That's awesome. And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Vanilla Ice from Philadelphia? Or am I wrong?
I think you might be wrong. I don't know. I know Will Smith is certainly from Philadelphia. Was born in West Philadelphia, not far from where I was born. We used to go by his house on the way to school. So
Born and raised to slap comedians.
well, it's a Philadelphia thing.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess the pivotal question that I want to ask earlier than later would be what exactly made you decide to uproot from Philadelphia, come all the way to Los Angeles, and then also start working in nonprofit as opposed to your successful law career?
It did not necessarily go in that order. I always liked California. I always wanted to spend more time in California, primarily because it's just so beautiful. People can say whatever they want about it, but the fact is, it's one of the most beautiful places in the United States, actually in the entire world, really, when it comes to climate, environment. People may disagree with me, but I think it's one of the greatest places around. So I always wanted to live here. And also, separately, always in the back of my mind when I was practicing law, I always wanted to do something more meaningful. But they didn't happen together, and they didn't happen on purpose. I came here because I wanted a change of scenery. And then once I was here, it gave me the emotional freedom and the time to stop and take myself out of what I was doing and think about how I could do other things.
And do you think emotional freedom, I like the phrasing of that a lot. Do you think that all people who are like practicing law in the United States specifically are kind of under pressure to not have that emotional freedom? Or do you think there is a balance if you pursue that career?
I think it is extremely difficult to have balance in that career. I think that a lot of lawyers will try to deceive you and make you think that they do have balance. I think that it is a profession that makes it very difficult to have time to yourself And I think it is very difficult to do things that you're passionate about when you don't have time to yourself.
Yeah, so I mean, I think because I'm also a child of the 80s, there's something going on in the world, if not just in America, but it has to do with like, this oft used phrase work-life balance and just like, touch grass. I mean, there's just like a lot of like things going on both beneath the surface and obviously at the surface where people are starting to question how much they work and what the point of life is and things like that. And this is a podcast about the point of life, but we approach it from the different angle, which is we explore whether you're afraid of dying or embracing it and how that's going to affect you. So I think right now I'm going to actually ask you, what do you think is going to happen to you when you die?
It's a very good question. Something that I think about it. I don't, without being too morbid, but in being, honest and open. I don't know. I sometimes, wonder, is there a heaven and a hell in a traditional sense? I do think that I probably have some additional debts that I owe to the universe, and I think that I probably have to make up those debts before I can feel like it's going to be some magical positive thing. So I feel like the easiest way to put it is I feel like I still have some work to do.
And do you feel like you created debt in this life, or do you feel like there's a metaphysical like soul that you possess which has a debt?
That's a great question that I don't know the answer to. I know that's not an entertaining answer, but I don't. It's a very good question. I don't know that I know the answer to that. I don't know where it all comes from, if it's family history, if you can inherit, bad energy from past family experiences. I don't know. But I definitely feel that it's there, and I feel that I still have work to do as a result of that.
When I knew you in undergrad, you were a psychology major, correct?
Yes.
Do you consider yourself like a psychologically interested person?
Yeah, interested and self-aware and knowledgeable of how it affects how we all live and exist and interact with each other. Yeah.
So if you had a patient who said they feel like they may have like a debt, like the one you were describing, would you call that guilt or would you use a different word? And I'm really nakedly asking this.
I think probably in some context, but I also think that sometimes, I don't know. I think if I was a psychologist asking that question, you'd be getting into whole other depths and channels, but yeah, I think that's a more generic way of putting it.
I'm just curious, and I'm also curious because like I like to use the term spirituality, not religion, because I feel like it's a very different word. So where do you see psychology in the umbrella of like spirituality? Like, is it a component or is it its own thing?
No, I think I mean, this might end up being more of a scientific answer. I think there's a lot of religion, so spirituality, mixed into psychology. Because remember, psychology is only a science that's existed for 200 years. Remember that humanity is like brand new, like civilized society, like me and you sitting in a room talking to each other is only a thing that's been around for 1,000 years or less, like functioning civil society. And religion was a big part of the early theories of sex. So my point is, a lot of it's based on morality and ethics, right? A lot of psychology is actually based on morality and ethics.
Yeah, and I mean, so I'm preoccupied with morality and ethics because I see such a like disconnection and connection to like everything we're doing on Earth, like what you just said, like even this conversation, even what questions I'm going to ask you. Like there's an ethical boundary to it, like I know things about you because I've known you for years, and like I could try to ask those like politely in front of an audience, or I could go, whatever. But my point is, there is like an instinct in me that kind of dominates my sense of morality and ethics, not the other way around. Do you feel the same thing?
Yes, I would agree with that. I think I probably think about it more than most people.
Yeah.
I think some people don't think about it, and it leads them to either not treat other people with respect or with dignity because they don't think about how it affects them, or to, like Brian Cox, the actor, I was just reading an article about it. I didn't realize he was an atheist, and I didn't realize quite how much he literally like just dislikes religion, which is unfortunate because I like him as an actor, but I now kind of lost some respect for him because he's basically like, oh, you're all idiots, it's all stupid, and none of you knows what you're talking about, and it creates all the world's problems. And listen, there's problems that come from organized religion, but I think respecting people's beliefs and spirituality is an important part of just being able to relate to people as a human being.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it gets harder as I get older, not easier, actually. Just because there are profound traditions that I don't agree with, and they like carry a lot of weight in our world. But at the same time, I know I don't want people tripping all over my weird philosophies and what I, think. And believe it or not, this is in my mind related to the idea of charity and nonprofits and all these things because, well, first of all, one of the most iconic religious figures ever, Jesus, was, all about give, give, give. And I think, as I get older, like I said, things change, but it actually feels selfish to give sometimes. Do you relate to that at all?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because there's a lot of people that do it for the wrong reasons. You can't do it for your own self. You can't do it. So like we were talking about before, you can't do it out of guilt or out of obligation or out of, you have to do it, presumably because you enjoy it. And then presumably because you actually see what good results from it. But, there are people that do it, I think, with the wrong motivation, in which case it doesn't really. So it's like the people that film YouTube videos or TikTok or whatever it is these days, where they go give somebody money on the street.
Yeah.
You're not really helping that person. You're sort of putting them you're putting them on the spot. You're filming them. You're sort of invading their privacy.
Yeah.
And do you really want to help them, or do you want to have 1 million viewers on TikTok? I would submit that you really just want to have 1 million viewers on TikTok.
Yeah, that's interesting. Long ago in grad school, it was called performativity, and I don't know if they still use that term, but it's like there's a performativity to the internet and to all these things. Although I would also say net good always outweighs the intentions. Not always, but
no. Yeah. There's theories. Listen, I don't remember. Listen, somebody will send you an email and tell you I was wrong. It was either Immanuel Kant, K-A-N-T, or whatever. One of the famous philosophers that talked a lot about ethics and psychology, and he said that it doesn't really matter what the motivation is if the net goal is achieved. So even if that person is only doing it for 1 million views, if they bought a guy a house and changed his whole life, okay, yes, ultimately that is good.
And so with your own life and trajectory, we were talking before this interview, but I volunteer, and the reason I volunteer is because you introduced me to volunteering. So it wasn't that I was like some horrendous spoiled brat who had never heard of it. It just didn't even occur to me as an 18-year-old in college that now I'm old enough to start volunteering. And so you had this program, Homework Helpers, and we would go up to the somewhat poor area of Pittsburgh, and we would just help kids after school. And I loved it. I hated everything you hate about a job, like commuting, getting there and all that. But once I was there, and especially when I left, the feeling of fulfillment was amazing. And so that's why I brought up the selfishness thing, is there is it's not just an ego feather in my hat, but there is actually a reward to the seemingly altruistic idea of helping others. And I wish people would see that and get addicted to it. It can be contagious. So with you, where did the idea of volunteering come from? Was that something your parents instilled in you?
No, you know what? I would actually give some credit to my high school. I went to Central High School in Philadelphia, the oldest high school in the country.
Wow.
A very prestigious public high school still to this day. And that was part of their, I won't say curriculum. I don't know if it was mandatory, but it was highly, highly encouraged. And they would help you they had a whole program to help you find volunteer opportunities to make it easy. They had hundreds of different opportunities, and started doing it through that in high school, and just going, oh, this is cool. It's fun to go somewhere and help somebody do something.
So are you air quotes addicted to it, or is it just something you really like doing?
I definitely, yeah, I would say addicted to it. I like the feeling. I'm addicted to the feeling of knowing that you've helped somebody else.
And then this is an awkward question because it sounds like I'm doing some sort of gotcha journalism, but there are like notorious nonprofits where like the execs drive like, you know, really expensive cars and all that kind of stuff. Like, and you are a lawyer, and I know you're like very wise and hip to like how the world works. What percent of American nonprofits do you think are like genuinely really there to help people versus like are just, I want a career and I want to, you know?
I think that happens a lot, which is unfortunate. That is part of the reason that they're so highly regulated, which is good. And actually, especially here in California, they're very highly regulated, which is good. It allows people to know things they need to know about them, and you know, everything gets filed. So I mean, I guess also as a practical point, I would suggest to people that you can check out any nonprofit by like going to the IRS and like looking at their 990 and seeing where all the money is being spent, seeing what they're doing with it. You know, transparency is really the key.
That's awesome. And so like how did you, because I don't want you to give real numbers at all. I'm not, that's why I said this is not gotcha journalism, but I have always been curious, like, how did you decide where to set like that number for yourself? Because you do have to live. I mean, you can't dedicate your life to helping other people and pay rent and live. So like, what was the mental calculus like for that?
Yeah, I mean, there's metrics, there's well accepted.
Oh, okay.
You can go online and read hundreds of articles, and they all generally have the same numbers. You want to keep your administrative costs at 25% or below, and you want to keep your program cost, the money that you're spending on programming at a certain level. And there's actually a lot of pretty well established stuff. So I just did a bunch of research. I looked into what the parameters were that make the most sense. And then we built our budget based on that, right? Knowing, okay, this is where it needs to be to spend this amount on programming, and for me to be able to come on board and be the executive director full time. And we were able, very fortunately, through a very good friend of mine, to basically get the funding that we needed to be able to build that budget.
That's awesome. And then like, this is related in my head. Like every single year, billions now are donated to like election campaigns, and it's notorious that some people give to both campaigns equally because why not? You know, it's basically just lobbying. That money could just actually go to the like causes that the people are professing they care about. You know, like instead of giving the Democratic Party or the Republican Party a bunch of money to run their candidate, you could just actually give it to like all those causes that they say they care about. So with a nonprofit, it's much more genuine because you're giving to them to know where it's going to go. How hard is it to like find that line between like advertising and campaigning for people to be aware of your air quotes like product versus like, hey, I just want people to like give and do this.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to Coffin Talk. I am proud to say that we are offering premium subscriptions at my website, mikeyop.com. That's MIKEYOPP.com. So please head over and consider supporting us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, again, believe it or not, it's like any other business. So it has to be run like a business in the sense of you have to make sure the business has recognition, that it has a brand, that people know that it's there, and you have to use the money wisely to do that. The only thing that makes it different than a normal business is that all of the money that comes in is reinvested within the business. It never goes to any person, the board of directors, the officers. Nobody makes any money, but they still have to treat it like a business. So again, when you do the research and you look at all of the nonprofits in the country and you average it all out, there's numbers that are very commonly accepted. Like, okay, it's okay to use 5% of your budget to do a TV ad or to do some promotion because you do. I mean, you know, in order to survive, people have to know you exist. And again, as long as you're being upfront and transparent with your donors, so they can look and go, okay, of every dollar I give, 5 cents goes here, 10 cents goes here, and then 80 cents goes to the actual kid to go get voice lessons or whatever. So as long as people know what they're getting into, I think most people understand that there's overhead in a nonprofit just like in any other entity.
That's awesome. And actually you segued perfectly into what I wanted to ask you, which is like, can you give us an example of a success story?
I mean, it's funny. They're in progress success stories because we're so new. But we work with this one kid, Dylan. He's from the Bay Area. He's a really good musician. He plays guitar and he's bizarrely good at it. Like well beyond. He's only 10 years old,
Oh
but
wow, that's cool.
he's beyond his years in his skill level. So we've been working with him for about a year. And we were able to, wardrobe is important when you're an artist, especially a musician. And any musicians that listen to this, they can email you and be like, "Yeah, he's right. Like the wardrobe is, because you're creating this whole image, this whole brand." So he needed a leather jacket. He was playing rock and roll music. He had the rest of the outfit, but he didn't have a leather jacket. He needed like a proper rock and roll leather jacket. So he came down here to LA for the day. We went around shopping. We went to a whole bunch of stores. It is actually very hard to find a leather jacket for a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
But after much effort and a lot of time, and we filmed the whole thing, and it was really cute. We filmed the whole day. It's all on our website, or at least part of it's on our website. And we finally found him a leather jacket, and he basically doesn't take it off. I mean,
cool.
When he films his videos at home, when he goes and does shows, when he's even just in his living room playing guitar, he wears that jacket. So that's just, we also made a music video for him.
That's so cool.
So just those little moments of you're building confidence, you're building, maybe that's the best way, you're building confidence. And for a kid coming into learning their art and learning their craft, having that extra confidence and that extra boost is what really makes the difference.
That's so cool, seriously. And I, as a father of 3 children, I can tell you that like nothing matters more to me than giving my kids confidence. And also the scariest thing in the world is giving them confidence and having no confidence in the world that they're going to grow up into. And that's my personal take. I'm not putting those words in your mouth, but obviously you have to have kids if you want to have kids, and you got to deal with like the present reality. But I do think that if a future generation of children are confident and have wonderful, good, loving memories of childhood, and that strangers who don't know them reach out and stuff, that is really beautiful. And what I'm most impressed by, I want to say, is it's really like hands-on. And you're not just like at some festival handing out like water to people. like you made a huge difference in this one kid, Dylan's life, and then you'll do the same. So what is so I know people know how to give to your organization, but what is the protocol for like the recipients? Do you find them? Do they approach you? Bit of both?
Yeah, a bit of both. I've been in LA for 4 years now, and this didn't all come about until about a year and a half ago. So during the time before that, during COVID, I was doing other volunteer work, meal prep and packing food and other stuff. And just, I had an opportunity, again, because it was COVID, the world was kind of slowed down. So I made some connections. I met some good other people here in LA, other nonprofit people, other people in that world. And we were able to use some of those connections. And then just reaching out to like Big Brothers Big Sisters. So we've been doing a lot of it by reaching out, but we've also, now that we are out there and are a little bit more known, people can also contact us.
That's awesome. It's really cool, and it's cool to know you for I don't even know how many years now. I should have done the math beforehand, but we met in 1999.
Don't ask me to do math. 25
years. It's our anniversary.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is. So I've known you for 25 years, and it's cool because like you've changed and you've grown up and you look different, sure, but really your heart is like the thing I became friends with, and your heart is still here, and I'm in person seeing it in your full form, and it's just cool. And I'm happy and proud to know you and have a friend who does this kind of stuff. I am curious, since I mentioned it, what do you feel about the world, not being specific to like politics or like this like issue per se, but just kind of, we've just gotten through COVID. It's 2024. There's a lot going on, but there's always a lot going on. How do you feel?
It's funny because I feel obviously some of the concern that other people do. There's a lot of instability, and there's a lot of there's a lot of division now. But I also feel surprisingly positive because it's one of the reasons that that the foundation does what it does, right? Like, we're not a food foundation. We're focused on art, and we're focused on art with young people for a very specific reason. I believe that art and the ability to tell your story or other people's stories is essential to humanity. The ability to bring people together through a movie, a song, a painting, something that you can create that people can then connect to and that can be unified around. So I think that creativity, the creative economy, the importance of art and having young creators is extremely necessary at this particular time.
I think that's a brilliant answer. And I've actually been reading a lot about how less and less people were going into the humanities in the universities, but there's actually like a slight uptick recently. So hopefully your organization and other things are helping that, although I'm a little down on the colleges.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with you on that. I don't think it necessarily. I think the traditional 4-year experience that you and I had at Pitt is becoming less and less common, and it's probably not wrong, right?
Yeah.
For it to become less and less common. My focus with some of these kids is, just get to a point where you can begin working in your craft. I mean, yes, do I want Dylan to get at least through high school to know how to do math and balance a checkbook and understand how much money he's making and understand how to write a business proposal or how to write songs properly? But beyond that, is it necessary for him to go to UCLA and get a 4-year degree? It might not be.
Yeah.
He might be able to graduate high school and be able to start going around and performing or making videos. So our goal is to get these kids to a point where they can work and make money as an artist, but that doesn't necessarily mean a 4-year degree.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And as someone who's always been interested in entertainment in this industry, both begrudgingly and like fulfillingly, I actually don't have a strong opinion about the following, but a lot of people do. So I do want to ask you, since you're involved in the arts, do you feel like AI is a threat to the arts? Do you feel like it's an assistant? Do you feel like it's neither? What are your opinions about this big talk about AI in the arts?
Nah, I don't see it as the boogeyman that everybody else does. And mainly just, firsthand, I see what these kids can do and I see the process that they go through to do it. And, I personally don't believe that a computer can replace that.
Yeah.
AI can write a song, but it's not going to write the same song that Dylan's going to write. It's not going to understand his emotions. It's not going to understand his, it's funny. I'll give you, and I think it's okay for me to say this. I won't get into too much detail, but Dylan he's also an actor, and he had submitted himself for a movie role, and he got along the audition process, and he thought that he had it, and then they sort of pulled it out from under him at the last minute. And again, only 10 years old. So what did he do? So he went in his room and started playing the guitar and started writing music.
Yeah.
So that's extremely cool. But not only is it extremely cool, a computer can't understand that. A computer can't understand the emotions of being 10 and thinking you're going to have this role, and then you find out you don't have it, and all that stuff that's going on, and then that comes out into a song. Computer can't do that.
That's cool. I like your take. And actually, it's weird because I don't know how I know this, but I feel like you're right. Like, this is a huge trend, and people are really into like seeing if it touches us emotionally. And I've seen things that yes, I would call it art. Like, I've seen like paintings generated by AI, but it doesn't mean it speaks to me the way.
Yeah, not at all. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it might look cool. It's there.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I mean, you look at, you folks can't see it, but you look at this. This is done by a 12-year-old.
Wow.
Right? Like,
he's pointing out a really colorful.
You probably didn't even think about it because it's just sitting there. But that's done by a 12-year-old. With every one of those little characters has its own personality.
Wow.
You can't replicate that.
I will take a photo of it and put it on the podcast because that'll be worth people checking out. Well, we actually really went long. I thought maybe we'd get shy in person, but no, this was great. And
I've never been shy my whole life.
No, you have not. I do always end the podcast the same way, though, which is I allow my guests to have the floor. You can just say whatever you want to say to my audience. So
that's an interesting, unrehearsed and on the spot. No, all I would say is, if you have the opportunity to do something that might inspire someone else or something that might help someone else go in a better direction, just from your words, from your actions, from just a little bit of support, being that voice that helps get someone else to the next level and do something great, it's pretty awesome. And whether it's for yourself or for them, I think it really, as we were talking about before, it doesn't really matter. It's just the act of doing it, I think, that's important and pretty cool.
That was beautiful, really well said, and I completely agree, because it was like a professor at the very end of my college tenure who said like maybe 2 sentences to me about what he saw in me that blew my mind and changed the entire trajectory of my life. And I remember it and I'll never forget it. So I do agree that even just your words of support to someone can change their whole life. So Jesse, thank you so much. Thank you for having me to visit in Los Angeles. We're going to go to an awesome comedy show tonight together. And this was the work portion of our day. So thank you again. To everyone listening at home, you've been listening to Coffin Talk. My name is Mike Oppenheim. And the best way to support the show is to head over to MikeyOpp.com. That's MIKEYOP.com, and sign up for free for the weekly newsletter. And please do check out the notes and check out Jesse's nonprofit, because I believe in him and I believe in it, and you can help other kids like Dylan. So to everyone listening, once again, I'm Mike Oppenheim. You have been listening to Coffin Talk, and we will see you soon.
Walking along when I hear this song, and I walk into you.